we want to be heard and be connected and love and
Yeah.
compassion and empathy and all that stuff. We tend to forget that. So we're all caught up in the mechanical world.
I don't have any medical background. I don't have any medical training. I'm a mechanic. What can I do in my realm of the HVAC world, in this system, in this house? What role do I have in helping them with their situation?
And let's talk about this now, just to get it out of the way. In my practice of doing indoor air quality at a very high level, my clients came to me with cystic fibrosis, right? That's a death sentence.
Yes.
Right. Now we've made great strides and so it's better, but
I'm glad you're bringing this up, by the way, because I was going to kind of, keep going. I love this.
COPD, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to die from COPD. Immunology and oncology. So typically cancer survivor patients have a very low immune system because of all the treatments. And so they're real susceptible. So we got to make sure that environment's clean. Debilitating asthma. And so these are people that go in full asthmatic arrests and have to be rushed to a hospital. So this is severe. I had clients come to me with lung transplants. And so their environment has to be conducive of healing. First, we want to make sure they don't reject the organ. And two, they got to heal. And that organ's got to adapt to their bodies. And then we don't want any pollutants by way of the airways getting into that. And then all the way down to your garden variety seasonal allergies, people that just really, during ragweed season just had a terrible time, or pollens or the pine or whatever. And so those are my clients. And so my decision for them has a lot of weight. Their quality of life and even their, prolonging life hangs in the balance of my decisions for them. And so when I talk about that, people, a lot of guys are, and I have to just make sure that they understand the gravity of what I'm doing with clients, because it's not, and that was a learning curve. Of course I had to learn, but most contractors may or may not have ever experienced somebody that came to them with that. And so in one of your questions, it's like, how does a contractor handle that and be confident in their decision? Yeah.
It's intimidating. No, I mean, if you're your average HVAC contractor, you're a mechanic, and he might be, there's all ends of the spectrum as far as, their capabilities. But, I think you come across a client or a homeowner that has one of those afflictions, and like, I don't have any medical background. I don't have any medical training. I'm a mechanic. What can I do in my realm of the HVAC world, in this system, in this house? What role do I have in helping them with their situation? Right. And I think there's some intimidation there for a lot of guys. They don't even touch it. They walk away from it. Honestly,
they run.
Yeah.
They run away from it.
So how do you talk to those guys? How do you convince them that they can do something? What is what's the conversation there?
Well, we have to be very careful. Okay. So if that is way outside of their, pay grade, admit that. And so I offer my services as a consultant to those contractors. And I taught a class in Houston. There was a contractor there, and these guys were bright. They had some great training through BPI and through NCI. So they were pretty sharp and well on their way into the performance aspect. But they had a client, they said, John, we have a client that's a little bit outside of our pay grade. And, can you help us? Absolutely. So what they had to do is I gave them the cost of my consulting. They went to the homeowner. The homeowner accepted it. So that was an opportunity to come in. I brought my tools for them to use them. It's tactile. They get to actually hold the tools, use the tools, understand what we're measuring and what that means for what we're trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And so we spent the whole day there, and we were able to come up with a scope of work. And then I led that table conversation. They wanted to see how I communicated that to the client. Mm-hmm. And I did it just the way we were talking. Hey, you know what? Here's what's going on, and we're connecting the dots. So, by the way, the issue with that client is their daughter, who was 15 at the time, wore what's called an iron lung. And it is a prosthetic that mounts outside and compresses the chest to help her breathe. And it's on a little machine. It's just like, and helps her breathe. She didn't have to wear it all the time, but there's quite often she had to put that on just to breathe. So this is like the real deal.
Yeah.
And so at the end of our time, we presented the scope of work as I saw it, and our data gathering, it made sense to him. And of course, the contractor had to bid that job because I don't know their marketplace or margins or what, you know. And so, but they put together a scope of work and they called me 2 weeks later and said, John, we closed that job. $60,000, no equipment. The equipment is only a few years old and they were fed up. They fired their HVAC contractor and 2 other ones because nobody came in was willing to take that hard look at other stuff. Now, granted, the contractor I was working with could have been one in that long line of contractors who didn't understand, but because they brought me in, we were able to bring light to the unseen. And that's huge. So it was all, the ducting was a mess, all new ducting, ventilation through a dehumidifying ventilator because it was Houston, Texas. Dehumidification tied in. They had 3 systems. So dehumidification tied into the system because our sensible latent, it couldn't keep up. It's Houston. And then hospital grade filtration and new controls, a nice portable unit inside the kids' room, and just got airflow and everything dialed in. We were able to do some light air sealing, but because we were creating a positive pressure, we were able to really just dial that environment in. And so that would be intimidating. You go in, it's like, this is my daughter and she's on this breathing thing. Hey, can you help me? Most contractors would say no, and that's okay.
Yeah, which is, you know, in those extreme conditions, I can completely understand why. It's calling the experts, right? So let's knock it down a level. Say not so. Let's go to in my mind, what I would say an average concern for a homeowner. You know, allergies, pollen, dust. You know, would you just direct the contractor back to making himself better at like your pillars? So the thermal comfort, obviously, he should be an expert at already, but you're going to teach and train, and there's just be willingness to learn on that behalf of that contractor to be able to address those common concerns through your pillars, correct? I mean, would that be your suggestion? Just get involved if the willingness is involved, the desire is there to start handling those kinds of concerns, right? Which again would think would be a good business model. Anyway, but in the fact that you're helping people. So talk a little bit about, the next step for a guy that is willing to learn, he might not handle those extreme cases, but is interested in adding those portfolio of services to his business model. You know, where does he start? He starts by going into your principles and
training is a good thing. And so I offer a indoor air quality principles workshop, and it's through Dyken Amana Goodman. And my boss Ben, he approached me and said, hey, we want to put together this curriculum, and we want to gear it towards the HVAC industry. And we both were in agreement that we weren't going to stand in front of a group of people and talk about products, because that's what everybody else is doing. He wanted the nuts and bolts and science about indoor air quality, how to get a foundation for a contractor to stand on, get the thought process going. So the learning ladder, if you will, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. Ignorance is bliss. But as soon as you know you don't know, that requires an action step. So you need to go out and gain knowledge, experience, and expertise, through training and doing, right? And then so once you know you don't know, and there's an action step and you learn, so that's cognitive, right? It's cognitive learning, and then it becomes subconscious. And I use this analogy. It's like I'm in New Mexico and I got to do a gig in Florida. I get in my truck, I turn the key, and I point it toward Florida. I don't know how I got there. Because I wasn't born knowing how to drive a truck, right? A time came when I had to learn. But now I turn the key, I point it to Florida, and next thing you know, I'm there. I don't know how I got there.
It becomes innate, right? I mean, it just becomes your hat. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with anything. And so in our industry, it's the same thing. So it just getting back to basics. You know, the ASHRAE came out with an epidemic task force within their page. I mean, they're in their website, and you can go and you can click on everything. And in this pandemic, you know, it's like, oh, we can need to do this and do that and do the other thing. But it really all came back to basics. And that is like ventilation and filtration and air exchanges per hour, all back to basics. And we, like I said, using my 6 pillars, it's just getting back to basics. And that is a lot of times enough to get you started. You know, let's get back to basics. And then, of course, what does that mean? Well, you know what? If you don't know how to measure airflow or static pressure, or how to determine how many BTUs a system is delivering in heating and cooling, or where your filtration rates are, so those, then you probably need to learn. You know, and that's a good place, because we're in the HVAC industry, and airflow is everything, you know, and airflow diagnostics as well. And then, hey, you know what? We can't discount the structure, the building, the envelope. So if you don't know how to measure that or identify, you know, thermal boundaries and pressure boundaries and, you know, zonal pressuring, if that's something you don't know how to do, well, there's training out there that can teach you that. And of course, everything has tools involved. So, yeah. And so, and then, you know, of course, getting into the realm of the unseen with microbial and
so but this goes, so by taking that action and diving in and making a conscious effort to learn, goes back to, you know, and adding that portfolio of services to their business model. It goes a long way to changing the narrative, right? You're doing something a little different than everybody else. So that homeowner goes and gets 4 quotes from 4 different contractors. Who might get the job? It might be the guy that actually asks a different question along the way, right? And because the homeowner is gonna be like, hey, nobody asked me about humidity. Nobody asked me about that my 5 glades that I have plugged in around my all over my house. And this ties into, beautifully ties into, I love this conversation, because we have to change a narrative. And I love, happy for you being here to talk about this. But I love your pillars, right? So thermal comfort, which again is the traditional narrative, filtration, humidity, ventilation, building pressure, pollutant identification, and source control. You go through your 2-day class, right? I think your Daikin and Mana class is a 2-day, 16-hour class, right? And you go through all this, correct? I mean, this is your curriculum. It actually walks through everything. We're to the nth degree about what we're trying to capture here in about an hour. You do a deep dive into that, right? And do you take the extra step in that class? And I'm going off memory here, and I apologize. About talking to the homeowner in the end. So you talk about IAQ, right? Investigate, analyze, and quote. I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
At the end of the class, on the second day, we go into typical client scenarios.
There you go.
And based on a lot of the jobs and clients that I've had. And so we walk through that process, and then what does that look like having that conversation? Well, one, you have to figure out the problem, but just having that conversation. So, and then my live class is a lot different than the virtual class. We've got exercises. I've got a real case studies of clients that I've had. We do one, her name is Helen, and she had chronic COPD. And so I lay out the job and the client and some parameters and some things that we measured. And then I have the class design a scope of work. And they do very well. You know, and this is after I've bombarded them with information. But yes, it's very foundational about how to have those conversations and some selling approaches. So you brought up a good point about having a bunch of contractors come in. If you're not standing out, you're blending in. You're just going to be another one. You know, in my business in California, just running, you know, sales calls, you know, estimates. I remember pulling up, and there's 2 HVAC guys in front of me. That guy would move, the next guy pull up, and we're in line. And I got to the point, it's like, I'm not even going to do this anymore, because low bid is a race to the bottom. Who can get to the bottom the fastest to get that job? That's not a race I want to win. That's not even a race I want to participate in, because everybody loses. The customer loses because they can't get the job done right for the price that they're paying. The contractor loses because they can't even do the job, so they're cutting corners to try to make ends meet. Their margins aren't where they need to be. And then our industry as a whole loses because everybody's trying to push that price down to where it's not even logical.
Yeah,
And so
for
that
sure.
low bid is a race to the bottom. And I in my class, I say, hey, look, in our realm of IAQ, you're not in that race. You are offering a solutions-based scope of work that your customers can't even touch, can't even come close to. And so don't even just keep price out of your mind when it is going to be when you got multi-tier. So my typical residential IAQ ticket came in at about $70,000 to $80,000. That was my
Wow.
typical ticket. And that is, sometimes there was equipment involved, sometimes there wasn't. Sometimes we had to do extensive shell work, as in removing all the insulation, doing air sealing, re-insulating, right? Taking drywall down to get to it, putting drywall back up, tweaking the building pressures and, ductwork and all the other stuff, filtration, and the stuff we talked about. But my average ticket was about $70,000 to $80,000 on a complete fix. And yeah, my marketplace is a little different. And then, with today's market, we got financing. We got easy
There you go.
financing. And if you're not using that, I think
Yeah,
everybody is.
absolutely. They're missing out. They're missing the boat. I mean, honestly, any homeowner can take their smartphone right now and apply for a 6-month no interest, no payment, PayPal or American. They can find, there's an app out there to get you money right away, even if the contractor doesn't offer it. There is and I hope we are, as an industry, because that is the key to, a key to success. But I want to, I think earlier you mentioned, I think the keys to the kingdom in this whole arena is striking a chord with the homeowner. Because when you find what's really, through questioning and analysis, you find what's of concern to them, right? Just your story before, and your world opens up as far as what you can do for them, right? When you find out what that is, you're in a position to really help. And guess what? You just differentiated yourself. Nobody else asked them these questions before. Out of those 5 guys that were just in the house,
Sure,
you're going to stand out.
And like the wife that was sitting in the den.
Yeah.
Our clients just want to be heard. We have a listening problem. It's what we have.
You know what? Amen. I in our discussions in our training classes too, it's like, ditch the pitch. Stephen Yastro, I had him on. I read his book and saw him at Hardy a few years ago. The whole thing is, the clients don't want to hear you and your story. They just want to be heard. And the best thing is for anybody to do is just, you can ask a question, then just be quiet and listen. Just listen, right? Let the story emerge.
The boundaries and the walls start coming down, and then next thing you know, they're telling you everything, and you just need to be willing to receive that. And I have had clients, after they were comfortable with me and I was genuinely listening. I mean, they break down and be bawling and crying and and I'm like, oh my goodness. And like I said, I mean, in our HVAC industry, we go and do a service call, we don't expect a hug. But you know what? I've got clients that are just like, John, and hugs, and it's like this. We build genuine relationships. I've got this one young lady, Arden. I met her when she was 5 years old. She was in Minnesota. I was able to go out on my own dime and work on her house with her family. We brought in some contractors to do the work, and to this day, I have a relationship with that family. Cards, goodies coming. And then, so I've been working with a company in Minnesota quite frequently. I go out there 3-4 times a year. So we go over and have dinner with the family. Arden was a bubble girl. She had chemical sensitivities, environmental sensitivities. She'd have to go in and do full barometric body wraps and pressure chambers and UV treatments. And then she had chronic asthma. She had food allergies. So at I think 10 years old, she was still at Thanksgiving dinner drinking out of a sippy cup because she couldn't eat the food. And so this little girl was poked and prodded. I've got a picture of her in full electrodes all over, trying to figure out what's going on with this young lady. And so this is the real deal. So we were able to help her with her indoor environment. Now it helped. but she's doing much better now. And just through the years, keeping in contact. Last time I was in Minnesota, my wife and I visited with the family, right? Mom and dad. And then on our way back out, we stopped in Madison, Wisconsin, and went and had dinner with Arden and got to see her dorm and her college campus.
Wow.
Because she's in college.
Wow.
Now. And we have that connection, that bond is like family.
Exactly. Not even just a customer for life now, but now just that connection and that whole new level of relationship. I mean, isn't that what every business or business owner and person would want for them? I mean, that's ultimately.
I call that the human element. Because after all the science and this and the mechanical and that, when you all like break it all down and it's all that is to the side, it's the human element. We're all connected. We're all bonded.
Yeah.
We're all, we want to be heard and be connected and love and compassion and empathy and all that stuff. We tend to forget that. So we're all caught up in the mechanical world, and
it's easy to do, right? In our mindset, we're there, we're at that home to do a mission, right? So we're mission minded, but if you take a step, we're professionals, we're good at, most of us are good at what we do anyway. So that's there inherently, right? To your point, like that next level is finding that connection, that human element, right? And that talk about a differentiator. I mean, of anybody, it's the human side. I love that, John. And if we all just had that ability to find and ask, we do.